Hello everyone, what is up? Welcome back to another episode of Killer Instinct, you guys. Thank you so much for joining me here today. If you're new here, hi, my name is Savannah. I am your host of Killer Instinct. And before we get started, make sure you go ahead and hit that subscribe button. That way you never miss an episode. We post weekly here on the podcast every single Wednesday. You guys are not going to want to miss it. We also upload the video version onto YouTube on Wednesdays as well. So make sure you are subscribed. Now, you guys, we have officially made it to another month. I cannot believe this is the first episode of October. Now, as many of you may know, if you have been tuning in for the past few months, with the beginning of a new month means the beginning of a new true crime category. But for this month, we are going to be doing things a little bit differently than we have in the past. Over the past couple months, we have covered cases on serial killers. We have done missing persons cases, female killers, sadistic stalkers, and many, many more. And for the month of October, this is going to be a wild card month. And you might be sitting there wondering, Savannah, what does that mean? Well, I'm going to explain it. The first 3 episodes of October are not going to be falling under any particular category. These are going to be cases that I've wanted to cover, however, haven't had the chance to because of the true crime category of the month, or it's going to be cases that you guys have suggested. And the reason we're doing it this way is because those first 3 episodes are going to lead us into the very last week of October when we are going to be doing Halloween. I am so excited to announce that we are going to be doing Halloween for the last week of October. From October 28th to October 31st, you are going to get a new episode every single day for the 4 days leading up to Halloween. And they are all going to be Halloween related episodes. If you've stuck around for the past couple years, you would know that we have done Halloween in the past, almost every year that we've done Killer Instinct. However, we did not do it last year, and I've read all of the comments, I've seen all of the DMs. We are bringing Halloween back. So again, that is why we are breaking October up the way that we are. We're going to have the first 3 episodes that then lead us in to Halloween of 2024, and I could not be more excited to share these cases with you guys. So I hope you are ready for a full month of episodes. Typically, we do 4 episodes a month. However, with Halloween, you are going to be getting 8 episodes of Killer Instinct this month. And as you can tell by the title of this episode, today we are starting off with a case that has completely taken over the nation over the past few months. Today we are talking about Wade Wilson. If you've been keeping up with true crime media for the past couple months, you probably have heard about this case. He has also been referred to as the Deadpool killer. And I have been eager to cover this case with you guys for the past couple of months, so I'm not going to waste any more time. With that being said, let's jump right on into it today. Wade Wilson was born on May 20th, 1994 to his biological parents. His father was named Stephen, and as far as his mother goes, there is very, very little information out there about his biological mother, including her name. So I was not able to find the identity of his biological mom. However, what I do know is that both of his biological parents were very, very young when they found out that they were pregnant with Wade. His mom was 13 years old at the time, and his dad was 14. And by the time Wade was born, they were only about 14 and 15 years old. Now, Stephen and Wade's mother knew from the very beginning that they were not in any position to be having a child, and they decided that the best thing to do would be to put Wade up for adoption. Wade's biological mother's parents knew a couple from the church that they attended that were looking to adopt, and they were even more thrilled when they found out that Wade was going to be a boy. That couple would then go on to adopt Wade shortly after he was born, and their name was Cindy and Steve Wilson. Now, Wade grew up with his adoptive parents in Tallahassee, Florida, with Cindy and Steve's other daughters. He attended Deer Lake Middle School and then went on to attend Lawton Childs High high school. Classmates of Wade said that he carried a very dark demeanor wherever he went. His friends would say that he would wear this same black hoodie to school every single day, and the friends that he did have were not great influences on him. Wade was very heavily involved with drugs all throughout middle and high school. He was known to smoke marijuana in the woods before school would even begin, and classmates said that Wade definitely struggled with authority and did not respect any authoritative figure. One of Wade's classmates used the word troubled when describing Wade. It was said that he hung out with the rebels and the kids that frequently got into trouble, and due to this, he ended up being expelled from high school after he got caught smoking weed in the bathroom. And the reason he got caught was because he accidentally caught the toilet paper roll on fire. Now, what's important to note is that the description that Wade's classmates and his friends from middle and high school gave him was very, very different from the description that his parents, Steve and Cindy, had to give to him as well. According to them, Wade was very well-rounded. He was a loving child. He lived in a nice neighborhood with his family. In regards to his family life, one of Wade's classmates actually said, quote, "He had the world given to him. He had a nice house in the suburbs with his parents who adopted him. They had greyhounds and expensive vehicles, but they were not just all about their material stuff. Their mindset was in the right place too, but for some reason on that course, something fell off. Something didn't make sense, like it wasn't appreciated or was taken for granted," end quote. It was clear to most people that Cindy and Steve always wanted the best for Wade. They tried to provide him with all the right tools for success and really set him up on the right path. However, something was not clicking. Classmates recalled one time when Wade stole his parents' car and disappeared for 3 days. Once Wade turned 13 years old is when things began changing for him behaviorally. At 13, his dad discovered that Wade was doing drugs, which resulted in him being Baker acted. Along with that, Wade also suffered several head injuries from sports that he participated in high school, and he got several concussions because of it. So Wade's biological father, Steve, currently owns his own window and door replacement company. He married a woman named Melanie, and the two have several children together. When Wade turned 18 years old, he decided that he wanted to connect with his biological parents. He really wanted to figure out where it is that he came from. He reached out to Steven, and initially the two attempted to form a relationship. And while they didn't have too many in-person visits because they did live a certain distance from each other, the relationship was mainly them connecting via phone calls or text messages. However, over time, Steven said that Wade began asking for money, and it became a consistent ask, and it really became the basis of their relationship. Whenever Wade wanted to talk to Steven, it typically was because he needed money, he needed some sort of financial backing or help, but regardless, the two maintained a cordial relationship. Wade's first known run-in with the law happened in 2012 when he was arrested for burglary and gun charges. He ended up serving a year in prison from September 2013 to November 2014 for burglary and grand theft. Wade's next known run-in with the law occurred in 2015 after his release when he was arrested on charges of sexual battery and kidnapping after a woman had reported that Wade had raped her after the two of them met at a party in Tallahassee, Florida in 2014. This party occurred in December of 2014, so only 1 month after Wade was released from prison. And according to this woman, she claimed that her and Wade were smoking in her car when Wade demanded that she get into the back seat. Now, according to this woman, she claimed that she met Wade through a mutual friend at a party. They both decided that they wanted to smoke together, so they went to the woman's car. Once they got into the woman's car, Wade then forced this woman to get into the back seat. When she questioned why, Wade then allegedly told her in a more forceful tone, to which she complied out of fear. When she was in the back seat, he told her to lie down on the floor, and he covered her with jackets. He then began driving around before ultimately parking the car on the side of the street. The woman said that Wade then got into the back seat of the car and began choking her with both hands. At this point, the woman was pleading with Wade to let her go, to which he told her that she had two options. The first was to do what he said, or the second was to get shot. The woman claimed that Wade then proceeded to rape and sodomize her for the next 3 hours. She said at one point he was even taking videos of the attack on her cell phone. She also said that during the attack, Wade put jackets over her head, making it hard for her to breathe, leaving her to have an anxiety attack and ultimately get nauseous and throw up because of it. Now, this attack lasted approximately 3 hours before ultimately Wade stopped. However, he forced the woman to remain with him while they went back to the party to pick up Wade's friends. Once they arrived back at the party and picked up his friends, Wade forced the woman to sit in the front passenger seat of the car with him on his lap. She asked to be dropped off at her brother's house, which they drove her to. However, Wade was sexually assaulting her the entire way there. Once the woman arrived at her brother's house and was dropped off, she ran inside, told him what happened, showered, went to sleep, and the following day went to the police to make a report. She did also go to the hospital and got a rape kit done, and Wade was arrested for this. However, shockingly, a 6-person jury acquitted him at trial. Now, in 2018, Wade was also speculated to be involved in a different murder case with a woman named Denise Williams. Denise was charged with the murder of her husband after she plotted his death with the man that she was having an affair with, whose name was Brian Winchester. Now, the two plotted to make Denise's husband's death look like a boating accident, and Wade Wilson's name got brought up because Brian told police and the jurors at trial that he tried to get Wade to help them fabricate the evidence. And Brian also claimed that Wade even went as far as offering to murder Denise as well, so that way there was no tie leading back to Brian. Brian said, quote, "Wade brought up that he was a hitman. I didn't believe him. He did offer to make Denise go away and make other witnesses go away. And I told him, don't speak to me about that again," end quote. But even with all of this, I do want to mention that Wade was never charged with anything in relation to Denise Williams and the murder of her husband. In January of 2019, an ex-girlfriend of Wade's accused him of stealing her laptop and her gun, and then the next month, in February of 2019, she accused him of kidnapping and rape. She said that he beat her and strangled her. However, the investigators decided not to pursue charges because of the lack of evidence and also due to a no-contact order that was in place, so Wade was let off the hook again. So now that you have a little bit of an understanding on Wade Wilson's background and his long criminal history, that is going to lead us to October of 2019, and it's also going to lead us to a woman named Christine Melton. Christine Melton was born on May 31st, 1984, to her mom, Katie. She grew up with her brother, Robert, and was described by her loved ones as the glue that held her family and friends together. Christine's mom was diagnosed with Alzheimer's, and Christine moved only 4 houses down from her mom's house. She did this because she wanted to be able to watch over and care for her mom during this time. The two of them were best friends and had coffee every morning together. Christine was known to be incredibly loyal, and she was said to have a humor that was unmatched. She had a quick-witted, dry humor that could and would make anyone in the room laugh. She loved traveling to the mountains and also loved the beach. She was incredibly adventurous and spontaneous. Her family described her as a once-in-a-lifetime person. Christine grew up in Illinois and moved to Cape Coral, Florida, where she worked as a bartender and a waitress at a restaurant called Duffy's. Like I mentioned, the timeline that we're looking at right now is October of 2019, and on the night of October 6th of 2019, Christine and her friend Stephanie went to a bar that night called Buddha Live. The bar was in Fort Myers, and Christine and Stephanie had been friends since they were in high school. That friendship carried on all throughout their life. The two were even roommates at one point when they lived out of state before moving back to Cape Coral to be closer to their families. The Buddha Bar in Fort Myers is a popular spot known for its live music, and that is exactly why Christine and Stephanie chose that specific bar on that specific night. They decided to go there there because they wanted to hear a few of the bands that were playing. So they took an Uber to the Buddha Bar and arrived there sometime between 10 p.m. to 10:30 p.m. Stephanie said that the night started out very normal. There was nothing out of the ordinary. For the first part of the night, Stephanie said that her and Christine stayed on the first floor of the bar, which was where the live music was being played. However, by the end of the night, they walked to the upstairs second level of the bar, and this is where they ran into Wade Wilson. But according to Stephanie, she said that her and Christine did not know Wade to be Wade because he did not introduce himself to them as Wade. He introduced himself to the women as JR. Stephanie said that JR, aka Wade Wilson, came off as very friendly and charming. They sat around and they all chit-chatted for a little bit, and then more towards the end of the night, they decided that they wanted to keep the night going. The bar closed at approximately 2 p.m., but everyone was drinking, everyone was in an upbeat, lighthearted mood, and they did not want the night to end. So because of this, at this point when the bar closed at 2, Stephanie, Christine, Wade, and another man named Jason all decided to leave the bar together and go back to Jason's house to continue the party there. Stephanie said from the very beginning it was very clear that Christine and Wade were interested in each other. She said that her and Jason really had no interest. It was more so they were tagging along to be good friends to Christine and Wade because they figured that Wade and Jason were also friends, which we will learn soon that was not the case. Stephanie said that once they arrived at Jason's house and the four of them walked into Jason's home, Jason's mom was actually sitting on the couch watching TV at the time, and Stephanie said that there was some obvious tension between Jason and his mom, who clearly was not happy that her son had brought back 3 random strangers to their home. Because of this, the four of them then went to Jason's bedroom, and Jason's bedroom had a door that led to the outside and had its own little private patio area. So Stephanie said that her and Jason sat outside while Christine and Wade stayed inside in Jason's bedroom. During this time, Christine and Wade engaged in a consensual sexual encounter, while again, Stephanie and Jason were outside on the patio. Stephanie said that Christine and Wade would come outside every once in a while, chime in on the conversation. However, they would then go back into Jason's bedroom. Now, there were drugs that were involved on this night as well. There was marijuana as well as cocaine. And I want to point out that, as I mentioned earlier, up until this point, Stephanie and Christine were under the impression that Wade, who again, they still think is named JR, they thought that Wade and Jason were friends just by the way they interacted with each other. However, it was very clear more into the night when they were at Jason's house that this was not the case. After spending about 2 hours at Jason's house, Stephanie said that there were definitely some comments that were made that made it clear to her that Jason and Wade did not know each other at all, and in fact, they had only met that particular night. According to Jason, he claimed he went to the Buddha Bar with a friend of his on the night of October 6th. However, his friend had left and he was at the bar by himself. After his friend left, Jason said that he started up a conversation with Wade, who was originally there with a different girl. Now, the girl that Wade was originally at the Buddha Bar with was his girlfriend of 6 months named Mila Montanez. Now, Mila claimed that the two of them got into a heated argument and she left alone that night. But again, Wade introduced himself to Jason and the other women as JR. So no one knew that his name was Wade. Everyone was under the impression that his name was JR, and Jason and him had met that night as well as him and the other women. Now, shortly after Wade and his girlfriend got into that argument is when he met Stephanie and Christine. So now we go back to the early morning hours on October 7th. After several hours at Jason's home, Jason told everyone that it was time to call it a night. The party was over, and he asked Wade, Christine, and Stephanie to leave. The three of them ended up getting an Uber and took the Uber back to Christine's apartment. And at this point, it was nearing 6 a.m. And Stephanie said once they got back to Christine's, both women felt a sense of relief. They felt like they had had a really long night. Things could have gone south. They had met these two men, but they felt relieved to be back at Christine's apartment because they felt that the night had officially come to a close and everyone was safe. But like I said, Wade Wilson had also gone back to Christine's apartment with the two women after leaving Jason's. Now, once they arrived back to Christine's, Stephanie said that she had to leave. She had to go to work that same morning. She needed to get back home. So she told Christine that she was leaving, and Christine hugged her goodbye and told her that she would call her later. Now, with Stephanie leaving, this meant that Christine and Wade were going to be left alone in Christine's apartment together. Now, according to Stephanie, she said that Christine gave absolutely zero indication that something was wrong. She didn't seem scared or nervous to be left alone with Wade. She wasn't acting uneasy. And in fact, Stephanie said that Christine was the type of person that if she felt nervous whatsoever or uncomfortable in the slightest being left alone with Wade, Christine would have told Stephanie that. She would have either texted her, she would have told her, she would have said, "We need to get this guy out of my apartment before you leave." However, Christine seemed perfectly comfortable being left with Wade. So after saying goodbye to Christine, Stephanie left the apartment and went to work that day at approximately 10 o'clock a.m. She said that she texted Christine later that day, just checking in, however, didn't receive an answer, which she thought was odd. She ended up calling Christine when she got off of work, and her phone went straight to voicemail. Now, when Christine didn't respond to Stephanie's text, Stephanie said that it definitely was out of character, but she figured that the two of them had a late night. Christine was probably sleeping in. She didn't have to go to work that day, so there was nothing really getting her out of bed to begin with. However, when Stephanie got off of work and called Christine and still didn't get an answer, this is when she started to get worried. At this point, Stephanie said that she called Christine's cousin named Samantha, who they were also very close with, and Samantha also lived close by. Stephanie had asked Samantha if she had heard from Christine that day. However, Samantha said that she had not heard from Christine at all. Now, at this point, several minutes after getting off the phone with Samantha, Stephanie received a phone call from a detective from the Cape Coral Police Department. Now, when she answered the phone, she said that the detective on the other end of the line asked if Stephanie knew where Christine was or why her car would be found in Fort Myers, which obviously Stephanie did not. As you can imagine from this phone call, Stephanie's concern grew tremendously. She immediately called Samantha back, and the two of them, along with Samantha's husband and another best friend of theirs, raced over to Christine's apartment. And that is when they realized that the apartment was now a crime scene. Caution tape was surrounding Christine's duplex unit, and there were police everywhere. After seeing this, the four of them went to Christine's mom's house, which was again only 4 houses down. They waited there for police to visit them with answers as to what happened and what was going on. Now, when detectives arrived, that is when he told them that Christine had been murdered. As you can imagine, Stephanie, as well as all of Christine's closest family and friends, were absolutely shocked that this was the reality. Stephanie couldn't fathom the fact that just a few hours prior, she was leaving Christine's apartment and she figured that everything was fine, only to find out later in the day that she had been killed. At this point, she then went down to the Cape Coral Police Department and gave her statement as to what happened, which is exactly what I have told you today. Now, over the course of the next few days, police were trying to figure out what exactly happened to Christine and who could be responsible for this. Christine did not have any known enemies. She very much was an upbeat, happy person. Everyone absolutely loved Christine, and no one could imagine who would want to hurt her. However, because Stephanie was with Christine on the day that she was murdered, she was able to tell police all about Wade Wilson. However, again, at that point, she only knew him as JR. She told police that she left Wade and Christine together in Christine's apartment when she left that day, and that was the last time that she had seen Christine. So obviously at this point, based off of the statement alone, police knew that they wanted to figure out who JR, aka say Wade Wilson was and where he was at that point. But little did police know, only several hours after Christine's murder, Wade Wilson was already on to his next victim, and that woman was named Diane Ruiz. Diane was 43 years old at the time of her death, and she is remembered as a loving friend and an incredible mother to her children. Her coworkers said that she was the heartbeat of the bar that she worked at. She was described as being a loyal friend with a magnifying personality. Her son Zane has said that Diane was looking forward to watching him in his debut in the school marching band. However, sadly, her life was taken before she ever got the chance to. At the time of her murder, Diane was engaged to a man named Scott Hannon, and the two of them lived together with Diane's two children. Diane was a bartender at a bar called the Moose Lodge, and typically, Diane had a friend that would take her to work because Scott was also working as a carpenter at the time and wasn't able to take her due to his schedule. So she typically always had a friend drive her to work. However, on the morning of October 7th, 2019, this specific friend was unable to take Diane to work. So because of this, she decided to walk to work, which really wasn't a far way. It was only about a 10 to 15-minute walk. However, sadly, Diane never ended up making it to work that day. Diane had not missed a single shift at work in 5 years, so for her to not show up or call in and let anyone know that she either wasn't coming or that she was going to be showing up late was incredibly out of character for her. Now, less than an hour after her scheduled shift at 10 o'clock a.m., police showed up at Diane's home. Now, Diane's son was the one who opened the door, and when he did, he saw a police officer standing in the doorway holding Diane's purse, saying that it was found across the street from Diane's job at a nearby elementary school. Diane's son said that police showed up to the home at approximately 10:40 a.m. with the purse and also told him that Diane never showed up for work that day. Now, at this point, an endangered missing persons report was filed for Diane. According to Scott, he said that he was at work while all of this was happening and that he typically leaves his cell phone in his car while he's working. He said around noon that day was when he was able to get back on his phone, and he saw that his phone had been blowing up with calls and text messages from people that were trying to get a hold of him. He said that once he learned that Diane never made it to work that day, he immediately rushed home. Upon arriving to the house, he said that he met with an officer who asked him several questions about the last time he had seen or spoken with Diane. He told the officer that he left for work that morning at approximately 6:30 a.m. and that Diane was still sleeping in bed when he left. He said that the last known communication that he had with Diane was that same morning when Diane had texted him after he left for work, jokingly saying that she didn't remember him kissing her goodbye before he left, but that was the extent of their communication, and that was the last conversation that they had. Diane's body was discovered 3 days after her disappearance on October 10th, 2019, after an officer who was canvassing the area discovered a singular vulture circling behind a Sam's Club parking lot, and that is what led them to discovering Diane's body. While she was heavily bruised, police were confident it was Diane because she was still wearing her work shirt when her body was discovered. Now, Dr. Thomas Coyne was the medical examiner that conducted the autopsy for Diane, and Dr. Coyne said that initially, by just looking at Diane, she had a lot of exterior bruising. She had bruising on both sides of her torso. She also had bruising on her forearm, her right arm, and her finger was also fractured. Her nose appeared to be fractured as well. Her ears and her nose were partially removed at the time that the body was discovered from the bugs that had gotten to her remains. And Dr. Coyne was also able to see that Diane had been strangled. Now, at this point, police did not know if there were any connection between the murder of Christine and the murder of Diane. All they knew is that they had two very violent and brutal killings that had occurred within hours of each other. But what we know is that after the murder of Diane, Wade Wilson drove over to his girlfriend's spa. The spa was called Mila's Spa, and Wade drove over there to talk about the fight that him and Mila had gotten in while they were at the Buddha Buddha bar the night prior. Now, this turned into a very, very violent scene in front of Mila's spa because Wade attempted to attack Mila and force her into the car. Now, because this was in public, multiple people witnessed this, and there were several 911 calls that were made. And by the time police had arrived at the scene, Wade had actually driven around the corner of Mila's spa about 400 feet away to a Joe's Crab Shack restaurant. Now, Officer McCormick was the one who responded to the call, and he met Wade when Wade was sitting in the car outside of the Joe's Crab Shack. Now, when Officer McCormick approached Wade, he asked Wade a few questions and then proceeded to ask Wade to turn the car off and give him the car keys because he was going to detain Wade while they tried to figure out what was going on in regards to the battery call. Now, it is important to note at this point, police had no idea whatsoever that Wade could have been connected to the murder of Diane and to the murder of Christine. They simply thought that they were responding to a battery call. They did not think that this same person was responsible for these murders at this time. Now, after Officer McCormick had asked Wade to step out of the car, Wade responded to this by rolling up his window, turning the car back on, and speeding off. Now, unfortunately, Officer McCormick was not able to do a high-speed chase against Wade and completely go after him, and there were several reasons for this. The first was the time of day. It was around noon at this time, and there were a lot of cars on the road. And for the safety of the other civilians in the area, the protocol says that the police are not able to go on a high-speed chase when there are that many people in the area. And along with that, the protocol for that district states that only certain charges can result in a chase or a pursuit of a suspect, and this was not one of those charges that fell underneath that umbrella. So because of that, Wade was able to get away. Now, even though police were not able to detain Wade, they were able to sit down with Wade's girlfriend at the time, Mila. They brought Mila down to the police station to have her answer some questions for them and to really fill in some of the blanks about who Wade Wilson was. Now, according to Mila, she said that her and Wade had been dating for 6 months, and only 5 days prior to this had she picked up Wade from jail. She said that she was actually the reason that he was in jail to begin with after she got him arrested for domestic violence against her. However, she dropped the charges. Now, mind you, Mila said that during this incident of domestic violence, Wade had tied her up with her hands behind her back, and she claimed that he beat, choked, and raped her for approximately 6 hours. Mila said that she hoped that they would be able to get back on the right track in their relationship, but it was quickly clear that this wasn't going to happen. She stated that Wade had gotten back into drugs almost immediately after his release, and things went downhill from there. Now, on the night of October 6th, Mila said that her and Wade went to the Buddha bar together and that she was actually there until around closing time as well. However, she said that her and Wade were not physically together the entirety of the night. She said that she saw a girlfriend of hers at the bar and the two of them were sitting down listening to live music while Wade was up and walking around the bar and being social and talking to other people. She said that Wade was very social and he had a lot of friends, so it didn't bother her or it didn't seem odd or out of the ordinary that he was up walking around and talking to other people at the bar. Now, Mila said that around closing time is when Wade approached her again. He came back up to her after not being around her for quite some time and told her that he wanted to go to Jason's house. Now, at the time, Mila said that she did not know who Jason was and she had no interest in going to Jason's house because Wade had said that the reason that he wanted to go to Jason's house to begin with was to do drugs. Mila said that Wade told her Jason had lots of drugs at his house and that is why he wanted to go. However, Mila had no interest in partaking in this. This did not sound appealing to her whatsoever, and she just wanted to go home. So she told Wade that she was not going to go, and that is what led to the fight that the two of them got into. Mila remembered Wade being forceful and pushy about wanting her to go. However, when she told him that she would not be going, he ultimately took her car keys and drove off in her car. Wade and Mila went to the Buddha bar that night in Mila's car, and Mila stated that she never carried a purse. She always had Wade hold things in her pockets for her. And so Wade already had her car keys to begin with. And so when he left, he just took her car. Mila said that even though the night was a little bit spotty because she had been drinking, she remembers seeing Wade get into her car with a couple other people. He didn't get into her car by himself. He got in with a group of people and drove off. Now, what we know now is that that group of people was Wade himself, Christine, Stephanie, and Jason, and then they went to Jason's home. Now, Mila also told police that the next day, October 7th, she received a very concerning text message from another ex-girlfriend of Wade's named Kelly. Now, Mila described the friend group as being very intertwined. She was friends with some of Wade's exes. Wade had dated a lot of girls. They had this very large friend group, and word traveled very fast. So Mila claimed that on October 7th, the following day, she received a text message from Wade's ex-girlfriend named Kelly, who said that Wade was being accused of murdering a woman named Christine. Now, Kelly told Mila that she heard the news from a man named Josh, who we will get to in a moment. Now, along with this, Mila told detectives that Wade had been talking about wanting to kill people for quite some time. However, she never fully believed him. She always thought that he was all talk, that he would never actually follow through with anything that he was saying. However, she said that he had told her in the past that he used to be a hitman, which again, she never fully believed. Mila is a couple years older than Wade is, and she figured that Wade was just this younger guy who was all talk and that she really had nothing to worry about because he was never serious about any of the things that he was saying. However, he did also tell her that he used to kill people. He said that he had killed other people, and one time even told her that he had killed someone and threw their body in a lake. But again, she did not believe him or take him seriously. Now, I want to go back to the man that I just mentioned named Josh. Again, Kelly said that she had heard the information about Wade murdering a woman named Christine from another friend of theirs named Josh. Now, Josh was the owner of a business called Mateo Graphics, which is located in Hancock Bridge Parkway. Josh and Wade were acquaintances through mutuals that they had. Like I said, the friend group was very large, and Josh and Wade were both a part of it. And so, even though they weren't the best of friends, they definitely knew of each other and were acquaintances. Now, according to Josh, he claimed that on the morning of October 7th, Wade drove to Mateo Graphics, which is his business. Josh said that when Wade arrived, Josh was working with a client and told Wade to give him a second and that he would be right with him. Wade then went inside and waited for Josh, and Josh said at the time, Wade looked extremely disheveled. He was wearing sweatpants, no shoes, no shirt, and appeared to have blood on him. Along with that, he was also missing several of his teeth. When Josh asked Wade what was going on, Wade said that he needed Josh to get him a plane or a bus ticket because he needed to leave town. Josh said that Wade's demeanor was very frantic at the time. He said that he was pacing back and forth, and at first, Josh assumed that Wade's behavior was because of the fight that he had gotten in with Mila. This meeting between Wade and Josh had occurred very shortly after Wade had left Mila's spa after police had been called. And so Josh figured that something had just happened with Mila. They had gotten into a fight, and he was trying to talk Wade down, to not make him so stressed, to really just tell him that it was okay, everything was going to be brushed over. But Wade quickly stopped him and told him that this had nothing to do with Mila. Wade said that the reason he needed to get out of town was because he had murdered people. Now, at first, Josh really didn't fully take into account all that Wade was saying. He really didn't take Wade seriously. He thought that Wade was really just talking a big game at this point. But Josh said that this quickly changed when he just stopped and took a second and looked at Wade and realized that Wade was being serious. And he very quickly started to believe him. Again, Wade was missing teeth. He had blood on him. He wasn't wearing a shirt. And so at this point, Josh said that he was very frightened. He didn't know what Wade's intentions were with telling telling him this. He didn't know if he was going to try and hurt Josh or going to try and kill him. So instead, he attempted to get out of the situation by telling Wade, you go smoke a cigarette, which he gave Wade a cigarette. You go smoke the cigarette. I'm going to be right back because I need to go pick up an employee down the road, and then I'll come back and we'll figure this all out. I'll get you a plane ticket. You just stay here. You take the cigarette. I'll be right back. So at this point, Wade is left in Mateo Graphics, and Josh gets into his truck and drives around the corner. Now, there were several other office buildings on the property of Mateo Graphics, so Josh just went to the different building and hid around the corner, and that is when he called 911. He then told the operator everything that Wade had just told him, and at that point, Josh waited for police to show up and walked with police back to Mateo Graphics, expecting to see Wade there. However, Wade was not there at this point. He was nowhere to be found. So at this point, Wade was on the run, and in order to hide from police, he ended up breaking into a home of a retired couple named Fanny and Kent Amlin, and they luckily happened to be out of town at this time. So they were not at the house when Wade broke in, but when Wade went into the house, he then took a shower, he ate some popcorn, he had some White Claws, he stole their clothes, and he was really hiding out at the house at this point. Now, the only reason that anyone was able to locate Wade at this house later that night was because of Wade's biological father, Stephen. Now, according to Stephen, he claimed that on Monday, October 7th, 2019, he received a phone call from Wade earlier in the day, so before Wade had ever broken into the home. He received a phone call from Wade, and when he picked up the phone, Wade told Stephen that he had done something that he would not be able to take back. Now, again, when this phone call was made, it was earlier in the day and Stephen was at work. He told Wade that he couldn't spend too much time on the phone because, again, he was on the clock, and so he would call Wade back around dinner time and they could figure out whatever was going on. Now, again, up until this point, Stephen had just figured that whatever Wade was dealing with was probably something financial. Wade always called Stephen to talk about money and to talk about his financial issues and to ask for money, so he figured that that's what this was, and he told Wade that he would just call him later in the night. Now, between that initial phone call and later that evening, Stephen received another phone call, but this time it was not from Wade, it was from a detective. Now, when this detective called Stephen, they asked Stephen if he knew where Wade was. Now, again, at this time, Stephen was not fully aware of what Wade did or what was going on. And along with that, Stephen also didn't know where Wade was. So he told the detectives that even though he received a phone call from Wade earlier, that he wasn't sure where his location was. He didn't know where Wade was, but if he did, he would reach back out to police. So the detective gave Stephen a phone number to call if he heard back from Wade. Now, around dinner time, Stephen said that this is when he got a second phone call from Wade. And according to Stephen, Wade started saying things that were very, very troubling. Now, again, initially, and this seems to be the pattern, when Stephen first heard Wade saying these things, he didn't fully believe it. Wade repeated that he had done something bad that he couldn't take back. He also went on to say that there were two people that were no longer going to be with them anymore. And along with that, he said that he was a killer. Now, again, Stephen said that he didn't really know what to believe at this point. Wade's demeanor when talking about this was not one of distress or worry or concern. Stephen said that he was actually very nonchalant in this conversation, which made it harder to believe, because Stephen said that if Wade actually did murder someone or did harm someone, he figured that he would be concerned or stressed or anxious, but he really did not seem that way whatsoever. Now, ultimately, this second phone call ended, and very shortly after, Wade called Stephen again, and this time he went into more detail. Now, this third phone call happened at approximately 10 p.m. that night on October 7th, and again, Wade told Stephen that he killed two people. When first talking about it, he said that he met a girl at the bar, and the two of them went back to her apartment for a while and hung out before she fell asleep. Now, again, this woman would be Christine Melton. Once asleep, Wade said that he then got on top of Christine and choked her to death. Stephen said that Wade's exact words were, quote, "I choked that bitch." Afterwards, Wade said that he spent some time with Christine's body in her house before ultimately attempting to wrap her up and put her in the trunk of her own car. However, Wade wasn't successful in doing this because he said her body was too difficult to move because it had become very stiff at that point. When Wade realized he wasn't going to be able to move her body, he said he then left her in the house, took her car keys, took her car, and drove away. Wade then went on to tell Stephen about the second murder he committed. This time, Wade claimed he saw a woman walking down the street while he was driving, and he stopped the woman and asked her for directions. And what we know now is that this woman was Diane Ruiz. Wade said that after asking for directions, Diane got into the car with him, and once she did, Wade confessed to choking her while he was simultaneously driving. After choking Diane, Wade said that he was looking for a place to leave her body. Once he found the spot he wanted to dispose of her body at, which was a parking lot of the Sam's Club store, he stopped the car, brought her body out of the car, left it on the ground, and that is when he noticed that Diane was still breathing. At this point, Wade got back into the car, leaving Diane on the road, and he ran her over with the car multiple times until he said she, quote unquote, looked like spaghetti. Now, Stephen said that while Wade was explaining the two murders that he had committed, Wade seemed full of excitement. It seemed that he had a bunch of adrenaline going, and it was almost as if he wanted Stephen to partake in this excitement with him. Stephen said it was at this conversation that he realized that he needed to turn Wade over to the authorities. Stephen had actually put Wade on speakerphone at the time and had his wife Melanie listen to the conversation, and both of them were in shock at what they were hearing. Now, the issue with turning Wade over to the authorities at this point was that no one knew where Wade was located. It was in a moment of quick thinking that Stephen, while on the phone with Wade, told Wade that he was going to get him an Uber from wherever he was to Stephen's house and that they could figure out what their next move was going to be. They were going to figure out the situation together. However, what Wade didn't know was that this was a setup. But Wade fell for it, and this is when he gave Stephen the exact address of where he was, which was Fanny and Kent's home. Now, while Stephen and Wade were on the phone, Melanie was also off to the side texting the detective, telling the detective the exact location that Wade had said that he was at, along with bits and pieces of the phone call and what Wade had been confessing to. Now, Stephen did remain on the phone with Wade while police were racing over to the address that Wade gave, and when police got there, Stephen advised Wade to walk outside and surrender, to turn himself in. Now, Stephen remained on the phone with Wade while police raced over to the location that Wade gave, and when police got there, Stephen said that he advised Wade to walk outside and turn himself in and surrender, which is ultimately what he did, and Wade was arrested. Now, immediately upon his arrest, Wade denied having anything to do with the murders of both Christine and Diane. When asked why he had Christine's car, Wade said that she let him use her car because his ran out of gas. He claimed that he told police that he met her at the Buddha bar a day or so prior, however, was adamant that he did not know who she was or even what her name was. Now, when the detectives told Wade that Christine had been murdered, he tried to blame it on Jason, who again is the man whose house they were all at the night that Wade had murdered Christine. Now, he even tried to get detectives to take a drive with him to go to Jason's house because he said he could point it out to them, he could show them where Jason was, but police were not buying it. Now, in regards to Diane, Wade also said that he had no involvement in her death whatsoever. He claimed that he saw her on the street and she asked him for a ride, so he gave her one and dropped her off at the bus stop, and that was that. Now, Wade said that he did agree that the deaths were tragic, but he didn't think it was strange that the two women that he happened to meet on the same day had died because because he knew what he did and what he didn't do. He knew that he wasn't responsible for it, so in turn, in his mind, it was not weird. Now, regardless, Wade was arrested and charged with 2 counts of first-degree murder for the deaths of Christine and Diane. Now, again, when Wade was arrested, Stephanie was able to positively identify Wade as being JR from the night at the Buddha Bar, which only further solidified, alongside with Wade's confession to Stephen, that Wade was the killer. Now, this case ultimately did go to trial, and during the trial, the defense tried to argue that the murders were not planned, that Wade did not seek out to kill Christine and Diane, and they did this that way they could have the death penalty taken off the table and out of the equation. Wade's lawyer said, quote, "I'm not arguing insanity. I'm just arguing the state's claimed premeditation. He's whacked out. He's out of his mind for any of this." End quote. They tried to argue that Wade was mentally ill and had a quote unquote diseased mind. They did bring in a neurologist to talk about Wade Wilson's brain and tried to argue that he had experienced traumatic brain injuries from athletics when he was younger. And so because of that, they were saying that the traumatic brain injuries could be a direct correlation as to why Wade's behavior is the way that he is and why he acts out in the ways that he does. The neurologist also claimed that it could be an explanation for Wade's impulsive and erratic behavior. Now, the prosecution, on the other hand, they also brought up an expert that really contradicted this statement and said that Wade's behavior was not the result of a traumatic brain injury that he had. And in fact, he blamed Wade's behavior on more of the drug use that Wade did than anything else. He said that if anything was going to really affect Wade behaviorally, it was going to be the drugs that he was taking. Now, the trial proceedings moved rather quickly in this case. The jury selection for the Wade Wilson case took place on June 1st, 2024, which was just a couple months ago. And then when the trial began, it lasted for only 2 full days. And by June 12th, 2024, after only 90 minutes of deliberation, the jury came back with their verdict, and they found Wade Wilson guilty of 2 counts of first-degree murder, as well as guilty of battery, burglary, and theft charges. Now, on June 25th, 2024, the jury in Wade Wilson's trial recommended the death penalty. And on August 27th, 2024, just a little over a month ago, Wade Wilson was sentenced to death. Wade's attorney did try an appeal for a new trial. However, the judge denied this motion. And as of the beginning of September, 30-year-old Wade Wilson was moved to the Union Correctional Institution in Rayford, Florida, where he will remain until his execution. Now, after the sentencing, Wade's attorney did try an appeal and request a new trial. However, the judge denied this motion. As of the beginning of September, 30-year-old Wade Wilson was moved to the Union Correctional Institute in Rayford, Florida, where he will remain until his execution. And that, you guys, is the case of Wade Wilson. It is the murder of Christine Melton and Diane Ruiz. And I am very, very curious to hear what you guys have to say about this case. So with that being said, you guys, that is all for me today. Thank you so much for tuning in to another episode of Killer Instinct. Again, if you're new here, hi, my name is Savannah. I'm your host of Killer Instinct. And before we leave, make sure you go ahead and hit that subscribe button. That way you never miss an episode. We post weekly here on the podcast every single Wednesday, and you're not going to want to miss it. I'll be back next week with a brand new one for you guys. And until then, stay safe. Bye, guys.